Okay, so a look at Star Citizen version 2.4.3 at 21:9. Now, I haven't had any previous time with Star Citizen and was very interested in it, but as it's so early in development, I held off as I was worried I'd be turned off the entire game if I entered at too early a stage and just got bored of it. And I can tell you now, I am so glad I decided to try it out, and this is a big part down to my subs, and you know who you are, and just thanks for the push. Anyway, let's first cover the ultra-wide support and then go over my thoughts on the game as it stands currently. I also want to mention that when you watch this, check the description or for an annotation on screen in case there is a newer version of the video, as I'll keep rolling out update videos as the game develops and turns into the final release. So the gameplay fully supports 21:9 in both first and third person. I did notice some lighting glitches and pop-in issues on the edges of the screen, but this was more in part to the game's optimization, as pop-in is still very noticeable on 16:9. It just seems to be more noticeable at an ultra-wide view. And both on foot and piloting, the experience is exactly the same as 16:9, as the HUD sticks to a 4:3 position. The menus are ultra-wide, which is lovely, the elements shifting to the left of the screen, and the background image stretching to take up the entire screen space. The stretch also isn't too noticeable, and it is a very welcome touch to not have black bars. Loading screens are unfortunately 16:9, and yeah, you're going to be looking at these screens a lot if you play right now. I've had some seriously long, painful waits, but it is worth it, so just hang in there. And that pretty much covers all the gameplay parts. Unfortunately, I didn't go and play around with the weapons, and I'll explain why in a bit, but I have no doubt that they function exactly like at 16:9, with just extra screen space showing off the world correctly on the sides. Now, performance-wise, this game is unbelievably hard to run. This video is hardly ever at 60 FPS, as you've probably clearly seen, and that will be a constant, very clear reminder of how far this game still has to go and whether you should buy it. I'm running a GTX 980 Ti and a Core i7-3770K with 16 gigs of RAM at 1080p, and struggle to maintain even 40 FPS in most places. Notably, being on a space station is a gigantic task for resources just to maintain a good-ish, and I say good, like 40 FPS, compared to being airborne, where you can generally stay above 60 FPS, no problem. Well, probably not airborne's not the right word, more like spaceborne or something, but yeah, you get what I mean. And you cannot expect to get a steady FPS, even if you are sometimes hitting 60, 70, you'll have massive dips at many moments as you're playing around. And this is all on the lowest settings, and so you can't go lower unless you're going to play at like 480p. And I tried playing at 1440p for a while, but let's just say I don't like gaming at 20 FPS. Now, continuing on the point of performance, I did get very different FPS levels in exactly the same areas depending on what I had done prior. So when I first load up the game, the FPS levels in Port Olisar will be dramatically better than if I go after a bit of flying around and visiting other places. Clearly some memory issues here, but I found that if I changed my graphics settings up one, then back down to low, it kind of fixed the issue, so bear that in mind if you are struggling with FPS. It must reset something or whatever's the problem is at the moment. So I found that to be useful when I was really dipping into the 20s in areas where I generally was getting 40, 50 FPS before. Now, it should be noted this is all specifically referring to Port Olisar and its surrounding environment, as this is the main draw of the game currently. I played a load of space races and drone fights and just flying around in free flight, and also just in my hangar, and in all these places FPS levels were dramatically better. So if you are struggling with Port Olisar, maybe just play around in the other parts of the game for now. After about 5 to 6 hours of playing, I can assuredly say that this is one hell of an ambitious game, and Jesus, seriously, I have no doubt that if they can pull this off, it will be one of the best games ever. It contains everything: FPS combat, flying, you've got different gravitational areas. There's tiny little things like you go and pick your ship up. It's not just there, it goes to a specific location. And you have your own hangar, and you have the requirement of depressurizing as you leave your buildings to go to your ship. Just, it goes on, and I really cannot wait for this to continue, and when it finally releases as the full build, I can just imagine a really brilliant game. I mean, my favourite moment so far was I flew around this mind-blowing setting with the dying star in the distance, and then I flew down and landed on a pad and got out of my ship, walked around, and then flew sort of in space and just jumping around with my jetpack, and then got back into the ship and flew off. I mean, amazing. In fact, really, this is what Star Wars should have been. This is just a huge, gigantic world with infinite possibilities thanks to their spread of all kinds of gameplay. It's going to create a truly brilliant world if they can actually create it, because they are really pushing the bar really high. Now, how could I not bring up the most obvious observation any viewer will have already made about this game? The graphics. They are truly something else. I'm running low settings and still everything is seriously just beautiful. The texture quality is near perfect, the design and details to every object is meticulous, and I just have spent hours staring at the epic sights the game has to offer as the scale of the structures like the rings around Port Olisar and the dying star are just gigantic and really are true eye candy. But this is, I suppose, the issue for the game. They are pushing hardware so hard that it's so hard to run, and it probably is a combination of these graphics and a lack of optimization at this point and in this build that is leading to the horrendous performance issues. But it is in a very early stage, and so I can easily forgive it for having such problems. Now, gameplay-wise, there isn't a huge amount to do. Obviously, you do have the basics of fighting within your ship, and this is clearly the most developed area so far, and god, it's so hard to fight. Will take me just many hours before I actually get any good at it. But you also have the FPS gameplay, which is filtering through now, which is something I'm really excited about. Otherwise, it's a lot of running around and floating around, which is still massive fun, but it doesn't last, and until lots more content is released, I can see it taking a while before people will be able to play just huge, solid chunks of hours without getting bored, and I have no doubt this will come in time. On this point though, I did have a great time doing space races and the like, and really here it was just a lack of players that stopped me playing more things. So I suppose that's the other issue. On the grand scale of things, the number of players online is very small, so it will be a while before the player count is beefed out significantly to avoid being unable to get certain game modes. Now, I tried a load of stuff at Port Olisar, but this is where bugs hit me like crazy. I tried 6 times to jump to another area in the galaxy, but simply one issue after another caused me to have to quit and start again, as there's no easy fix jump back to your home base thing. You have to quit to the main menus and then load all the way back in, and those loading screens are just horrendous. I had my ship refuse to listen to any controls I clicked, even after I told it to self-destruct. I got into a friend's ship and managed to freeze as I went up the ladder. I frequently found that when I died, I'll respawn at Port Olisar, but the sounds will still be broadcast to me of what is happening where I died, which is pretty annoying. And then once I managed to get to a comm satellite, only to crash out while trying to land as I couldn't make my ship slow down and stop spinning. Oh, that was really annoying, as I had really wanted to try the first-person combat out. But I suppose with more updates and time, I'll be able to explore in more depth what the world has to offer, and the content on offer will also increase. Now, there is a single-player element to the game, but I didn't buy it, as I have already dropped a significant amount of money for a slightly upgraded package for the game, and was annoyed that I required even more money just to get the story added on. So yeah, a bit of a heads up on that. I might grab it at some point, but I'll probably wait for a few more versions of the game to be released. Lastly, on controls, they are so complex. You could spend ages, and I did spend ages, learning all of them, and still I can't remember half. Essentially, the entire keyboard is used up, and I initially started on an X-Bone controller, but then found it wasn't good enough as it didn't do enough, and it also wasn't accurate enough on dogfights, so I moved to the keyboard and mouse, which generally was massively better, but I do wish I could sit back with my feet up and just use a controller. But I suppose in such a complex game, you have to expect to use a keyboard and mouse. That is not to say that you can't use them in tandem. I did use the gamepad a lot and just occasionally hit a key on the keyboard, like the insert button to change the camera angle. But again, I don't know, it's going to be your decision on how you like to play and what you want to be able to do, I suppose, in the game. Jesus, I've just realized how long I've been going. There is so much to talk about in this game, and I could talk for ages more. But in a wrap up, essentially, if you are going to spend the money on Star Citizen, yes, ultra-wide support is basically perfect, and the graphics on an ultra-wide monitor will blow you away. But you must remember that you firstly need a ton of power in your PC, otherwise there's no point in buying it at this point in time, as you just can't run it. And if you do have the power, then ask yourself, are you willing to put up with the many, and there are many, issues and limitations the game currently has? I would love to fast forward in time another year or two and see the final product, as I'm so excited for it. Now, I've probably missed one or two things in this, as there is so much here, but I hope that gives you some information on how the game runs at 21:9. Give this video a like if you found it helpful, and subscribe for future info. For any other games at 21:9, head over to my channel. Hopefully I've covered it. If I haven't, then leave a comment down below and I'll try and cover it. See you later.
Begin scan. Contact. Landing mode. Engage. Landing gear deployed. Landing complete.